need technology in every classroom and in every student and teacher's hand, because it is the pen and paper of our time, and it is the lens through which we experience much of our world. I deem it great honor to welcome our beloved principal, Sayyid Shaukat Ali sir, who always inspire us to work with zeal and dedication, and always he insists us to interact with students impartially.
Thank you,
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, thank you.
I take pride in welcoming all our heads of section who have always provided us with their constant support and guidance to make the best possible education for our students. A friendly welcome also goes to all heads of department and teaching fraternity. Most importantly, on behalf of Ideal Indian School, I take this opportunity to welcome today's guest speaker, Dr. Amitha Mullah Watel. Dr. Amitha Watel is a pioneer in the field of education and has experience of working in the creative arts, special needs education, peace studies, and curriculum development for 4 decades. She has held several posts in India and abroad at both school and university level. Latest being the long-standing Principal Director, Springdale School, New Delhi. Dr. Watel has been recipient of the prestigious National Teachers Award and the Intuver Award from the Australian government for her work in the field of Asia literacy. Dr. Watel is on the advisory board and former governing board member of CBSE and member of advisory board of Delhi government. She's on committee for creating a board of education for government of Delhi, member of focus committee of NCRT, and member committee for creating a curriculum development and framework for Delhi government. Dr. Watel is the advisor and the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, NCPCR. Ministry of Women and Child Development in collaboration, NCRT, and on the ministerial consultation on education for National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, Niti Aayog. Dr. Watel has taken over as the chairperson and executive director, DLF Schools, Scholarships and Innovations with effect from 1st July 2021. On behalf of the management, principal, and teachers, I thank her for providing her gracious presence to join us today to enhance our academic proficiency on the topic Future Classroom. Over to you, ma'am.
Good morning, everybody. Assalamu alaikum, namaskar, and thank you so much. I would like to thank Mr. Shaukat Ali for having the faith in me, for giving me this wonderful opportunity, for coming and speaking to all of you. I think it is his generosity of spirit and the fact that he has thought me capable of being a part of your family, a part of your school. And he's someone I respect a great deal, someone who has made a mark in the field of education in the Middle East. Thank you so much, sir, for having me here today. Thank you. And thank you so much for the wonderful words that you have just spoken. I think, is it Anwar ji who has spoken about me? Thank you very much, Anwar. I don't really deserve all those words. I think that biodata should be circulated and not really read out. I would like to start by saying that for those of us who are out there, a very belated happy Onam for yesterday and a very happy Rakhi for today. So there are, as usual, we are people with many, many festivals happening. So it's wonderful that we're all here together on this very auspicious day in which we can have conversations around learning. I'm going to start off with a very interesting story. Many, many years ago, Gandhi Gandhiji Bapu, the father of our nation in India, he went to a school in Ahmedabad. And there was this wonderful principal like Mr. Shaukat Ali, who was standing there, and all the teachers were lined up, and he was saying, this teacher teaches English, this teacher teaches maths, this teacher teaches physics. So Bapu smiled and said, which teacher teaches children? So that's the interesting thing about the national education policy. And how should we make our classrooms creative? We have to start getting out of saying, I teach maths, I teach this particular subject. We have to start looking at how, not what we teach, but how we teach it. And I think that's the essence of what a creative classroom is. So can physics or chemistry or biology be taught without the child really feeling that he's got stuck in a conundrum of just physics, chemistry, biology, English, but says, this teacher is teaching me life, and she's teaching me life through physics. This teacher is teaching me heat, light, and electricity, but is teaching it to me through mathematics. So how do we create creative classrooms? That is what I'm going to be speaking out today. I'm also going to be showing you a few lesson plans for middle and senior schools that maybe we can design, and I'm sure most of you are doing it, but I thought I'd just share some thoughts with you of how we look at learning. So with that, I will start with the screen share, and I want to know whether you could see this. Can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Right, so now I'm just going to do from the beginning. I'm going to just set up a slideshow. Yeah, from the beginning. Right. So what is a future classroom and what is a 4D framework for schools is what I'm going to be looking at today. And what is a 4-dimensional child? I have shared this presentation with your principal, and I'll be very happy if you can share it with all the teachers, because I think that education is for sharing. And it would be nice, because I've already sent it to you, so that the teachers can use it in their classrooms if they feel like it. They can make use of it, they can talk to each other, they can make some sub workshops with it. So it'll help you in many ways. So let's start looking at what is a 4D framework. So I want to just, for you to understand that the most important aspects of learning today, you have to focus on 3 things. One is the foundational learning, which is basically language and mathematics. If we are able to strengthen literacy and numeracy from a young age, then we don't really require any kind of help for children. So our main aim, starting in the junior schools, starting in the primary schools, is to strengthen the foundational literacy and numeracy of children. And we have to also, along with strengthening it, just get out of this system of 3-hour testing, 1.5-hour testing, 1 hour testing, because the CBSE is going to be changing. I was asked to do a national meeting for assessments. I don't know whether you've seen that particular YouTube video, which Mr. Ahuja was also in it, and the chairman CBSE, in which a lot of very well-known people who are working with the NEP talked about assessment. And every assessment that we have has to have learning outcomes. There's no point of a child who goes from class 3 into 4 or 6 into 7 or 9 into 10 without having specific learning outcomes. So I think before every lesson, the first thing you should do is, what is the learning outcome? I'm sure you do it, but it's always important to keep remembering it, that the learning, without the learning outcome, there is no point of going forward and doing any kind of teaching. And then, of course, as Anwar rightly said, that the integration of technology in education. Without that, we are nowhere, because at the end of the day, the way the pandemic has panned out, it's very clear that our classrooms have to be hybrid. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sitting in this box and speaking to you. You would be seeing a person with blood and bones and skin standing in front of you in Qatar, if your principal was kind enough to call me. So the point is this, that today the reality is that we are stuck in these boxes. So how do we sort of work through these boxes is very, very essential. Now, these are the main gateway skills which you require. Keep these 3 gateway skills in mind. Developing the language and the numeracy of children, ensuring that the learning outcomes are there in the assessments, create creative assessment systems, and integrate technology. And if you do these important 3 things, automatically critical thinking and problem solving will become an integral part of your learning system. So keep these 3 gateway skills in mind, and this is very important. The next thing that I would like to bring to you is that how do we do this? And I am so pleased when I hear that you have these wonderful seminars and you have these wonderful teacher training situations in place. Now, people talk about creating a curriculum framework. I would like you, and I would like all of you who are in positions of leadership in your schools to create a pedagogical framework. A curriculum framework we all have. How do you transact that learning? You do it through play. Do you do it through art? Do you do it through project? Do you do it through competency-based learning? Do you do it through activity-based learning? Do you do it through theme-based learning? How do you transact the pedagogy? We all have curriculums, but the children are not interested. They want to know, how do you teach what you teach? And how boring can you be? And how interesting can you be? The pedagogy that you brings that interest into it. And so it's very essential that each school should have a research and evaluation wing. Create a small wing. You have wonderful leaders. Create some plans and some documentation through which young teachers can learn. Strengthen the institutional capacities. Coordinate amongst policies and programs. What is the coordination amongst your policy and your program? You may be having a policy. It can be seen in your website. It can be there in your school. It can be there in all your books. But are you being able to converge the policy with your programs? That's very important. What kind of attitudes do parents have? Are we sensitizing the parents? Are there enough programs for our parents? And how many teacher training seminars do we have? How many conferences do we allow our teachers to attend? Do we feel cash strapped? Let me share with you. There are schools which are doing very well because they ensure that their teachers do great deal of training, and everybody doesn't have to go for that training. If you have 5 or 6 leaders who can go for that training and they become the master trainers and they bring it in. For example, today I'm talking to you. You have my recording. That can be used by other trainers. They can just say whatever I have to say, and they can then rework it and use it as a training module. So use these as training modules so that you don't have to spend so much money, because during COVID, we are a little cash strapped. So how do you do training? You create a situation of ready systems, ready schools, ready families, ready teachers, and of course, ready children. So these areas of readiness can only happen if we create strong pedagogical frameworks using the different aspects that I've shown you. The other thing I'd like to ask is, what do your room arrangements look like? You want to have a creative classroom? Does your room I know that abroad you have beautiful looking rooms, you have lovely classes, you have wonderful material. Most of the schools there are very attractive. I'm sure yours is too. But then the most important thing, if you want to bring in a creative classroom, is whether the child is 17 years old in grade 12 or is 3 years old in nursery, what kind of arrangement does your room have? Does it encourage positive behavior? If the classroom is not positive, the energy is not positive. Children don't learn well. Do children use material properly? Do they have a habit of cleaning up after them? Can they learn through play? Can they transit? Do you have proper transitions as they move? Or are children just moving as blocks into another class? And then again, as another block into another class? Do you have an understanding of how different children move differently? So we have to have these developmental milestones across the school. It's not about nursery and kindergarten. Development milestones are in middle years. They're in high school. They're in senior school. There's a development milestone in grade 10, in grade 11, in grade 7. And that is why we call it a school. What is the sense of belonging? What is the transition? How do you direct people into becoming independent and autonomous? Do they do problem solving? Can they make connections with the real world? Every time a child leaves electricity open, does he think at that time of coal miners who are dying because they are taking in the coal into their lungs and they may be dead by the age of 30? Does a child understand the interdependence of life? Every time a child wastes food, does he think of a farmer who is starving in a field, who's standing there in 3 feet of water picking up the paddy? Can he make the interdependence of life? If the child is only thinking about himself, there is no learning. We are just generating educated, insensitive human beings. It is essential if we create a creative classroom, how do we make sense of information? How do children show their own efforts and engage in learning? Do they have an understanding of empathy? Do they empathize? Is there a sensitivity involved? And how is technology used in your classroom? Technology also has a certain sensitivity behind it. How do you use tech? Because half the time you're using tech, some children are putting off the video. They're finding us very boring. They're sick of us. Sometimes they feel, oh my God, again the same story. Again, I have to sit in front of a box. They will run, they will open the fridge, they will do other things. They will not be involved. They may start doing other work that they are more interested. How do you make technology interesting? I think how do you have breakout rooms, chat rooms within their own class so that children can work in clusters, because children learn the best through peer learning, through each other, through making them into sort of leadership groups. Instead of just one teacher preaching to a class of 40 or 30 or whatever your school room is. So what are the guiding steps of curriculum? And this is so essential, that there has to be a continuous comprehensive revision and monitoring of children. We have to constantly monitor their development. Otherwise, we cannot see what their learning outcome is. We have to have a new age learning. And you must have design thinking. Now, what is design thinking? Everybody talks about design thinking. Design thinking is what is at your core. If your core is an apple, and you're talking about an apple, from the apple, you can talk about the farm. You can talk about the seed. You can talk about production. You can talk about distribution. You can talk about weather. You can talk about the history of how the apple seeds came into India. That is design thinking. So that the children from one little aspect of learning create a network of learning systems. And then can from there come back into the apple, and from the apple go out into the big world. So that is what it is. If a child goes to a monument. So from a monument, if you go to a beautiful mosque, you look up at the mosque and you see the beautiful patterns on top of the mosque. From there, you can do mathematics. You can see triangles and shapes and angles, and then the marble of the mosque, or the material used in the mosque, the kind of artisans that are involved, the kind of color systems that are involved. So I think from there, the child learns architecture. He learns maths, he learns aesthetics, he learns when the mosque was created, he learns the geography of the mosque, he learns the sociology of the mosque, who lives around the mosque, what are the different marketplaces around it, who are the people who come there, what is the population involved in it. So whenever we are teaching, we should teach it through design, so that the child's entire mind gets expanded. An emphasis on exploring, on inquiry, on discussion. And keep partnering with the parents. The parents are your greatest support. However, they may be aggressive, they may be sometimes upset. It doesn't matter. It's their child. And their child coming to our school is necessary for us, because the child lies at the heart of everything we do. And so when I look at this aspect, what do I think of? There is a stage of initiation between 3 to 6 years. And this is when you have choices and free play and pedagogical approaches. You can use environmental or experiential or inquiry-based, or create, or through art. And there's several skills that come out during this time. And then you have a stage of industry when child start working hard from 6 to 8. That's when they understand their peer. They start thinking. They start guiding learning. They start asking you questions. And that's when we build partnerships with families. So the whole context of learning starts changing. What is the environment in which they learn? The home, the classroom, the community, the place. I've written Delhi because which is the region where you are, what is the nation that you occupy, how does it all come across, and what is the context in which you bring. So the most important thing in your report card should be knowledge, skills, abilities, competencies is a very important aspect of your report card. In fact, start reworking your report card. Your report card should have knowledge of a child, the skills. What are the skills the child has learned? What are his attitudes and values? What are his competencies? And finally, at the end, what is his learning profile? Does he have the profile to move to another class? And if he doesn't have that profile, then somewhere you and I have failed the child. The child doesn't fail, my friends. You and I fail. Now, everything in life is a perception. It's a perception. I may be nobody. I may be no one, but I may create a perception that I am someone. Now, why am I saying this? I'm saying this to you because a teacher comes to class and has a perception about a child. She has a perception. Now, a teacher may look at this and say, the child is a duck. The child says, no, I'm a rabbit. You've got the wrong perception about me. You think I'm a duck, but I'm a rabbit. Now, I've used this allegory, but a teacher thinks he doesn't know anything. The child says, I know. The teacher doesn't understand. So I'm bringing this perception to you. The perceptions is what you have to get rid of as teachers in a creative classroom. Let's go there with no biases, no judgments. Because every time when we are in a school, in the staff room, we say, oh, this person is going to come to your class next year. Oh, be careful. Very troublesome person. Very troublesome. Very weak. We have already made up our minds the child is weak. We've already made up our minds that the child is troublesome. We've already made up our minds the child is challenged. Why have we done that? So we've already made up our minds the child is a duck, but the poor child is a rabbit. He can run very fast. He doesn't have to waddle, And so this is a perception. Here's another perception. You may look upon it as a beautiful girl, and somebody looks upon it as a witch. Now, some of you can see the witch, and some of you can see a lovely little girl. So a teacher may look at the child, oh my God, this chap is never going to let me, or this girl is going to be very, very difficult for me. So you already perceived that the child is looking in a certain way. This is again a perception. These are interesting perceptions you can play with. And then you have to think about it yourself. Here's another perception. This looks like a vase, and it looks like two faces connected. Now, so what I'm trying to bring out to you is, in a classroom of the 21st century, let's stop the judgments. Let's stop the perceptions. Let's just go there without any baggage on ourselves of our children. Let our children breathe. Let them come to life. Let them be who they are. Let them be in their skins. And I have realized it. I have dealt with the most difficult children. I have been in education for 48 years. That's a very, very long time. And I have learned one thing, that things are never what they seem, never. You may say a person looks so nice, so happy. Who knows what cross they are carrying inside them? So also, who knows what that child has? So let's just because children are leading very difficult lives today. Their parents are leading difficult lives. Let's be kind to our children. Let's be kind to them. Now, the funny thing about us is that we perceive ourselves through our thoughts, right? When we think about ourselves, we say, oh, I'm a very good person. I'm a very good speaker. I can connect with anybody. And we perceive other people through their actions. So we look at other people's actions. We don't say somebody comes and is in a bad mood. We look at her, she's always in a bad mood. She's always fighting. We are not thinking about the thought that maybe that person is going through a difficult time. As far as we are concerned, we are perceiving ourselves through our thoughts. Our thoughts are great. We are wonderful people. We may be acting in whatever manner we may be acting, but we are only looking at ourselves. Can we perceive other people the way we perceive ourselves? Can we not demonize the other? Whatever color, whatever creed, whatever caste, whatever religion, whatever we are all human beings. Children are our biggest asset. Let us not demonize our children. Let's look at them through their thoughts, what is happening in their minds, not necessarily their actions. So let's get into another space. Okay, this is just a fun thing. You may think you're a lion, but others may think you're just a little kitten making too much noise. So the same thing with the children. It's a very cute way of looking at how children look and how they perceive us. So I just thought I'd make it a little lighter for you after that heavy stuff I gave you about pedagogy and curricula, because it's always good to break up a production into a presentation into lighter parts. Okay, now any questions? Anybody would like to any questions here, or I'll take it a little forward. Anwarji, any questions? Sir, any questions you think anybody would like to take? We can always a 5-minute question break and then I take it forward. Anybody'd like to ask? Do you want me to proceed?
You can proceed, madam. I will ask the questions in the last if possible.
All right, all right. Thank you. Thank you.
Doctor's appointment also today, you told me that.
Right. I hope I'm very audible and clear to everybody.
Fantastic, madam. It is audible.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Great, great. Thank you. Now let's look at this. What is it that our classrooms look like? Okay, let's look at this. We keep talking about 21st century education and we keep talking about skilling and we keep talking, but ultimately, this is just talk. Now in our classroom, I think it's important, like, for example, like our circles meet in the Olympics. Let's have these circles meeting. So what is modernized knowledge? Essentially, it's interdisciplinary. Now, what do I mean by that? We have been talking about interdisciplinary learning till the cows came home. But our homework is always physics separate homework, bio separate homework, math separate homework, history separate homework. No. I think the child just needs one concept, like I talked to you about creating design thinking. And from there, every aspect can be touched upon. So if you give one piece of homework, that homework should have all aspects so that the child approaches the homework in a holistic manner and doesn't look upon it only as homework for history, homework for geography, homework for science. Because life is the biggest homework. And life is not in silos. Life is not in a compartment. So if life is not in a compartment, my friends, how can learning be in a compartment? Because learning is life. So let's make up our mind and say, every time I give some work to our child, it has to have encapsulate within it an entire world together of what they do, from history to geography to science to physics to economics. A whole world out there can be adapted. So let's look. This is what is 21st century knowledge development. There are buildings which are coming up. I mean, I've been reading that there are buildings which are coming up in various parts of the world, where in the early days, when we built a building, it used to be just an architect, the contractor, the painter, the plumber, the locksmith, the basic hardware kind of guys. Today, the building has environmentalists, it has doctors, it has artists, it has counselors. So, I mean, it has something like 65 different professions are used in creating a structure like a building to make it livable. I'm talking about modern green buildings. So if that is the kind of world that our child is going to inhabit, a world where there are innumerable ways of looking at life and learning, we can't possibly fixate the child in one kind of learning of just history, geography, economics, maths, social science, and so on. We have to expand. So that is what interdisciplinary knowledge is about. And of course, the rest of the stuff about, and so with all this will come communication and collaboration. What is the point of having a paper tiger? What is the point of having a person who's a nerd? What is the point of having a person who cannot communicate? What is the point of being sitting there and not being able to talk? Because today in any group discussion, they want to hear you. Any company that hires you wants to hear how you talk, how you think, how you articulate. And how will anybody know how you think unless you're able to speak about it? You can't tear your chest out and say, here, this is what I am. You have to talk about it. You have to articulate it. You know, it's very important to build up the powers of articulation. Today, I notice, I don't know what you feel, but I feel you ask any child to stand up and talk for 2 minutes on any subject in any language, he can't do it. Yes, matlab, maybe, I see, you see. Except your trophy children. You have these 3-4 trophy children in every class. And we are so proud. Oh, this is this kid. And you will just keep looking at that kid. This is not the reality. That kid is whatever he is, not because of you, but in spite of you. That is the bottom line of that kid. He's a special kid. Point is, we are all average people. I'm an average person. The point is that in my averageness, are you helping me to build my communication, my collaboration skills? If you're not as a teacher, then what am I doing in your classroom? I don't want to just know 2 + 2 is 4, because every child does not go into research. Okay, research, yes, you need to be a person who's very fixated, who's always quiet, mum, reading, reflecting. But everybody is not a researcher. And even to be a researcher, to convey it, you have to be somebody. You have to collaborate and communicate. So how do you develop these skills in children? Now, you talk about a growth mindset. You know, we have to move from fixed mindsets to growth mindsets. You must do a study. There's a fantastic woman called Carol Dweck. Read her papers, Carol Dweck. I will share some more presentations with you of Carol Dweck. I'll send them to your principal, Sir Shaukat Ali, and I will send them to him. Look at those beautiful presentations. See how she thinks about how to develop growth mindset. Create a report card like a growth mindset. Because, you know, we all are stuck in these mindsets that we have. And meta learning is the whole idea of learning to learn. How do you learn? How do children learn to learn what they learn? You know, so the learning to learn is the meta learning. So the metacognition is that. How does the child understand that? He can only do that if his mindset flowers. And of course, the character of the child, the ethics, the resilience. I mean, today you talk about SEL, social emotional learning, CEL. Every school should have a CEL center, but I think every school should have a SEAL center, because adversarial skills. How do you stand up against adversity? How can you look at problems and competencies without collapsing? The COVID has taught us this. The COVID has taught us that in spite of whatever problems we are facing, we are hanging there. We are hanging out there. In many ways, the COVID has been the greatest teacher in our lives. Because still very recently, children would collapse, they would get a hyper, they would restlessness. But now in many ways, a lot of parents, a lot of teachers have helped children to understand the whole idea of how do you deal with resilience. How resilience is one of the biggest factors of 21st century learning, because my friends, I'm telling you, the next 2 years will not be what is today. The next 4 years will not be what is the next 2 years. Whatever you're teaching your child today will be out of the window in the next 3 years. So it's not about what you're teaching. It's about you getting that child ready, future ready. How do you get that child future ready? So what are the pedagogies of deep learning? Do you do story-based? Do you do experiential learning? Remember, I started it with a story. I started this whole program with a story, because the story sets the context. The context is, don't teach the subject, teach the child. That is the context. Whether you teach him through art, you teach him through sport, you teach him through technology, you teach him through problem-based learning, you teach him through experiential, you teach him through novels, whatever way you teach, you have to ensure that the whole child is the 21st century child. It's a 4-dimensional learning. And the 4th dimensional is the consciousness. What is the deep consciousness? What is the ethics? Do we want to have educated monsters? Or do we want to have empathetic people? So the importance of connecting learning with service is very important. Serving to learn, serving to lead. We should all be people who serve. Service is an essential part of understanding learning. Because today you will notice many people's lives have been saved because other people's service. Many people have been helped because other people have gone on and counseled people. The understanding of conscious serving has to be integrated into our child's consciousness and systems in the 4th-dimensional learning aspect. So this is a very important slide, and look at it as you think about learning in your classroom. Now, this is another very important thing, and I would like you to do, and this is all teachers, if they're listening to me, or principals, this is a very interesting thing. See, if you did this experiment in your school, try to do this. Every classroom, let the teachers do it. Every classroom has this kind of a McKenzie bell curve. This is a bell curve, right? In the olden days, it used to be used for factory workers, but it has not changed much, my friends. Because and this is why I'm telling you perception. In every class, a teacher says, in every class, you have about 2.5 innovators. That means children who are there, your trophy children. You have about 13.5% of early adopters, children who are able to understand what you're saying quite quickly. But they're just 13.5%. You have a 34% who is an early majority, who may understand you after a week or 10 days or 15 days or 2 months. You have a late majority who may start understanding the subjects after 8 months, 6 months, 9 months, who we call below average, way below average. And then you have 16% who people say are laggards, who never learn anything. Now, what is our job as a teacher? Every teacher should create a bell curve in her classroom. And in her mind, say, in my mind, in my perception, this is an innovator. For example, what is it called? Rita, Salim, Anna, these are the innovators. My early adopters are these. My early majority is this. My late majority is this. And by my understanding, this is what I feel are children who can't catch up. And then it is our job to ensure that every 3 months, at least one child or 2 children should move from the 16% to the late should move to the early should move to the early adopters, and maybe a certain percentage can move into the innovators. So this is our test as teachers, our test. But what do we do? What do we do? Every year, the same child goes up till he reaches class 12. The child is the weak child. And you say in the staff room, he was always weak, always weak. We never work on these children. I think our test as teachers, as educators, is to ensure that when we hand over children to the next class, what we perceive to be the late majority of 34% should at least come down by 5% and become 30%. What we perceive to be early majority should again come down to 30%. What we perceive to be early adopters, maybe, see, the innovators are sort of different kind of kids, but you still, if you give the correct, if you give the correct strokes, you give the correct nurturing, you give the correct environment, anybody can be that. And you have to get out of this business of 16% laggards. To get out of it. There is no laggard. This is in our mind. We have not found the, there's a very beautiful piece of poetry which says, the buttons of your mind were difficult to find, but perhaps my fingers were far too clumsy. So is it the clumsiness of our fingers that hasn't found the button of the mind of the child? Why is it that the same child suddenly goes to college and blooms and comes back and says, hey, ma'am, I'm doing this. And you think, yaar, ye to bada bewakoof tha school mein. And you think, how is it possible? And you say these kind of things to yourself. You already perceive that poor child to be a fool in the school. And and the biggest problem with us is we use language very, very carelessly. Foolish, silly, stupid, crazy. We see these words. And these words affect us, they affect our children. So please, I would like all teachers, all supervisors to carry out this experiment. And perhaps at every 3 months, go to your principal and say, sir, my late majority now 3 of my kids have moved from late majority to early majority. And I think special prizes should be given of efficiency to teachers. So in the beginning, they can show that this is what I think of my classroom format, and this is what has happened, and so on and so forth. This is a great learning that please try it. I've been doing it all my life. I've been trying it. Even today, I work on this. Now, let's look at this, the critical activity in your brain. You will see how this creative thing moves. You will notice this creative growth the brain growth. You'll see how it moves. It's fantastic. See how this brain grows all the way. In fact, right up to age 12, 11, the activity has grown, which means, and everybody says, kids are fantastic in junior school. Why are they fantastic in junior school? Because you're always doing funny things with them, you're engaging them, you're doing activity-based learning, you're doing theme-based learning, and then, oh God, you land up in high school. Oh God, now the boards are coming. Now forget about it. Let's revolve around the 5 NCERT books we have. Now there is Unit 1, Unit Test 2, Unit Test 6, Unit Test 7. Oh my God, we drown them in those 5 NCERT. Their whole life is the 5 NCERT books for studying for JE or something, or E or D or C or whatever it is, or some professional medical or whatever. That's okay, but let's not take the joy out of it. Because please understand, the creativity that we find in the children's growing up years, right up to the time that they are about 13, 14, is at its highest. Let's use this creative model of critical period in child development. Let's use this model because it's a cumulative brain growth and we need to have this. It's very, very essential that brain grows at the pace that you're seeing. So that is why I'm very worried about the COVID, very worried. You know, people keep saying, oh, technology, we're there, we're doing online. But my friends, there is absolutely no substitute for schools and teachers of brick and mortar, blood and flesh. No substitute, no substitute. Because remember one thing, you and I have already evolved. We're adults. We've had this brain growth business when we were young, right? So right now, whatever we do is practice and experience. Practice and experience, practice. We keep practicing, we upgrade ourselves, we read, and then we have experiences. But right now, there is a huge learning gap in children. There's a learning gap in children. They are missing out very important years of their childhood. 2 important years of their brain growth, of cumulative brain growth has happened, 2 years. I don't know, is the school working in the Middle East, in Qatar? Is it working? Sir Shaukat Ali, is it working there? I'm afraid you're on mute. Yeah.
I am. Ma'am, actually, from 24th onwards, we are starting again classes. And we are asked to start 50% classes physically from 24th by government of Qatar. Last year also we started, and we never stopped education till now, and government of Qatar is supporting in this. Even children got 2 doses of vaccine, and even they are given vaccine to all the teachers in the beginning itself last year. And we should hats up to the government here, because teachers were considered as a COVID warriors, and they gave vaccine to all the teachers school-wise. They called, and they were in a pipeline to give. In the initial only they give vaccine, 2 doses of vaccine of Pfizer. Okay, so we got vaccinated, and along with that they started all COVID precautions they took, and they started the school here. And regularly they monitor also, madam, and the special inspectors will be there who we don't know only. They'll be coming around the school, standing around the school, checking what is going on. And we will not be knowing only. They'll be recording all the videos and going and giving to ministry. Because since this is one of the fastest growing country, along with that rich country, so they don't mind spending on the education, and they're spending a lot of money on education here. And schools are highly developed, as you told. So no classroom is bad here, and every classroom has got 2 ACs fixed inside. So fantastic. And even for your information, ma'am, we have installed a LED panel board in every classroom. So that's how it is happening. But alhamdulillah, classes and all is fine going on, and our teachers are also blessed. And dear teachers, you should understand one thing. Today, the person who is sitting in front of you is none other than the CBSE chairman itself, because I can tell ma'am is second chairman for all the chairmen who went. I started seeing the chairmen from Satbir Bedi madam, because Satbir Bedi madam was there. I used to interact with ma'am there, and even I used to interact with our last time Anil Sarup sir came for talking with us. So I used to interact with Anil Sarup sir also. So madam is a total guide for CBSE, I can tell. And moreover, please keep one thing in the mind. Madam is responsible for the school's development of Delhi. I think she is advisor for government of Delhi, and I think Anwar Sadar read out. And Madam is responsible for the development of government school in the private school fashion in Delhi. So people are liking private school less now and government school more in Delhi. That was because of the mind child or the brain child of ma'am it is. And Madam took that initiative. So we should be grateful to have such a great educationalist with us. Please understand, I was talking to Madam and it was, to get Madam itself on the phone, it is very difficult. But with the great difficulty, Madam took my phone and I got Madam, I talking with the Madam, and Madam told, no problem, I can talk anytime, you can bring. And I asked, Madam, can you come down to Qatar? Anytime when you call, I'll come. So that was the generosity of Ma'am, and I am really blessed, and God keep Madam healthy always. And today, actually, Madam was supposed to take her mother to hospital, and she told Shaukat, can you prepone this session? I'll finish the session and go to hospital. So that is the dedication of a pure, true educationalist. And believe me, before me, she was calling me, telling that you open the Zoom ID, and I was telling Sajid, please open, Madam is there. And she told, I want to test my PPT. So that is the zeal we should have as a teacher. Madam is a thorough teacher, a true teacher, and I can tell she is leader of all teachers. I can give this sentence to all of you. Ma'am, thank you very much for coming here. You can proceed.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you for those kind words. So I'm now going to share, and I must congratulate your government. What a fantastic initiative that all of you are there and you're vaccinated and you're safe, and may God bless you, and may you keep shining and doing great things under the leadership of Sir, who is so positive in his approach in every way. Thank you so much. I'm going to share a few creative lesson plans for middle and senior schools. And I think we just have a quick look at this. So when we look at science, I think it's very important to look at the kind of, different kind of pedagogies or aspects. What do we expect our children to become? We expect that if this is the kind of learning outcomes that you should need, that can there be observation in the classroom when we're doing science? Can we manipulate material? Is there analysis, and can we do comparison? Do we record things? And the concepts of environment, health, hygiene, and life skills, are they integrated into every aspect of our science lesson plans? And I think that's very important, whatever we do. For example, I'm giving you a very minor one. For example, if we talk about, say, metals and non-metals, I think it's a chapter in Standard 10. Those of you who are there. So how do we, I'm just giving a small, the learning outcomes that we have, the uses of jewelry, aluminium, copper. So how do we use it? Then the usage and transformation of metals as per our needs and our daily lives. How do we use metals in our daily lives? For example, how do we, the steel is iron plus copper. Gold and ornaments are silver plus copper. Lead is tin, which is used for soldering to make circuits. Do children learn it in this manner? So the oxides of sodium and potassium, we're learning about sodium and potassium, but are children making the soap along with learning that? So ferroliquids, there are so many oil spills all over the world. So do children understand that how we can utilize ferroliquids are basically iron-based? So how do we use this iron to remove oil spills? And how metals are in our body? Our body is filled with metals. So at so many aspects, the child learns. He learns the jewelry, he learns the everyday work that is required, the soap that can be used. He learns how he can better life if he grows up as a scientist and makes better things, when he can remove oil spills if he gets into a rig or something like this, and how his own body is connected to science. The science runs through the body into the outside world. So he learns to innovate, he learns scientific temper, and he learns creativity. All these three things are the different kind of learning outcomes. Just one example of a lesson in science in grade 10. There's so many ways we can talk about metals when we're doing it. So also when we talk about mathematics. So what are the number skills, the logical thinking? Is this part of the whole thing? The spatial intelligence, the interdisciplinary approach in mathematics. For example, I told you, when a child goes to a cricket field, is he able to understand the length, the breadth, the pitch, the speed of the ball, So the moment a child enters a cricket field, you should say, hey, this is the mathematical ground. It's not really cricket, it's maths. Because at the speed at which you spin the ball, at the speed at which you throw the ball, the kind of the breadth and the length of the pitch, the quality of what you're doing. So all these things are connected to life. So observation, taking the child out of the class, taking him into a building or into a painting or into a sculpture through experiential learning and non-routine problem solving. Try, my friends, the question is the quest. There is an entire program that the CBSE is going to be doing. It's about creating questions which are ungoogable. Because today you make out a Google form, the child just, how they are. Kids are kids. They, in 2 minutes, they'll give you the answer. God knows from where they've got it. Can we give ungoogable questions? For example, if we are talking about the Battle of Panipat, or if we are talking about the Treaty of Versailles, which was signed in 1919 between the European countries and Germany, if we're talking about that, instead of talking about the Treaty of Versailles, the year it was signed, where it was signed, blah, 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 after World War I was over, etc., 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 can't we just say, if you were drafting the Treaty of Versailles, how would you draft it? So what does the child have to do? The child has to not only know about how the treaty was, but he starts thinking strategically. Would I have brought Germany down to its knees? And because I brought Germany down to its knees, there came a Hitler. So can the child think out of the box, my friends? The question is the quest. The assessments today that you're going to have are all going to be non-routine problem-solving questions. So please start doing that. Create question banks where not your head, but your brain starts thinking that is this question. So automatically, if you give non-routine problem-solving questions, the child won't be able to fill your Google so fast. The Google test, he'll take time because he can't take it from somebody else, because you'll immediately know that the answers are the same. Here, if it's the same textbook, the answer is the same. But if you give different questions, how do you question the child is most important. So this is an example of a maths thing. So for example, how do you do an expression in an equation? 2x is equal to 12. Here the x stands for 6. So how to form a real life equation, a simple age problem. If my age is x, say it's 30, and my mother's age is 2 times my age, calculate my age. I mean, create questions. The teaching pattern and to generalize certain instructions. The base of a language helps to learn any software programs. So the language base is basically maths, it's algebra. If you're a computer person, algebra is a very part of programming languages. When we're solving questions, we should carry on like this. And then, for example, I'm giving you another example of a chapter in geography. So the thematic evolutionary approach, the themes, understanding the cause and effect of, say, tides and rains, and understanding the cause and effect, the holistic approach to geography, understanding the conflict between individuals and the society. For example, the way we are behaving with plastic, that will affect the geography of the land. Why is it today people are so scared that countries like Maldives will disappear? There are nations where people are having meetings underwater because they're so desperate that they're trying to show you. I think I was seeing the other day, I think, was it Mauritius or Maldives, where the entire cabinet was underwater doing a meeting to say, after a few years, we will be having a meeting underwater because this island is going to disappear. So, there are so many things we can say. What is the conflict between an individual and society? How do you appreciate the views of moderation? How do you develop perspectives and their validation? How do you validate it? So please look at all these things with a thematic approach of how you do. And so when you talk about, for example, rebellions that have come. So what is the cause of the uprising? How colonialism was exploitative? Talk about colonialism. Talk about the role of women in national movements. So it's not just one topic. You talk about the world centered around that topic. Through that, the child will start analyzing things. Hey, it happened here. If this happened during these elections, that happened during the elections 10 years ago, how do I analyze these elections? So the child starts thinking critically. Think about data timelines. What happened during these data timelines? Our data timelines is Alexander invaded India in 326 BC, and all history starts up after that. But I think today, after March 20th, 2020, there's another history that starts. That's when COVID happened. So there's a data timeline after COVID when the whole world changed. So what changed? Why did it change? What happened socially, geographically, societally? What happened during these times? Make children think all the time out of the box thinking. So also with languages, the reading and the listening. Today we have ASLs. We have, you know that in senior classes, you have the listening skills, speaking skills, the comprehension, the narration. How do you write? How do you think about, how do you make them do small haiku poetries so that they learn to think? A haiku poem is a great example of teaching children. You know, for example, if you say, there's a haiku poem, and I don't know if you know, haiku is a 575 meter. It says, when my house burned down, I get a clearer view of the new harvest moon. Now, this is a very interesting haiku because it's 17 syllables. At the same time, it tells you, so what if tragedy has come to your life? You get a clearer view of the moon. You have oneness with nature. So these are things that children learn from. They learn from creative writing. They learn how to express their thoughts because children are so bottled up these days. They also learn how to negotiate, how to have the voice. The children's voice is very important. The voice of the child. How does he learn to speak? How does he learn to negotiate? How does he learn conflict resolution? I think mindfulness, conflict resolution, because today, you know, the entire world is filled with conflict. Can you have people, and there are specialists who come and who do conflict resolution in countries where there are conflicts. They are invited and they're paid big bucks for that in international understanding. Why can't children, as very young children, start learning how to do appreciation, conflict resolution, communication of their emotions? That is why I say create cell centers, create centers of social emotional learning so that they can develop and you know, manage themselves. So these are some wonderful ways of how we can change the way our lesson plans work. Our lesson plans must not be the same boring lesson plan. The first paragraph we did of the poem, then we showed something on the online, some video or some audio, or we show some PowerPoint, and then we talk about the poet. Most boring. I think it's so interesting if we start approaching poetry from a different angle. We start approaching creative writing from a different angle, and we start doing these kind of interesting lessons. And I think it is imperative that we start seeing lessons in a different manner. So things should be open-ended. They should be interdisciplinary. They should be evidence-based. They should be abstract concepts and documentation. They should have a research methodology and inferences. Create inferences. Open your report card. When you open your report card should show, is it open-ended or have you closed every lesson? Can you leave your child saying, hey, I never thought about this. Maybe it can be this. But if you close it, if you close everything at the end of every lesson and say, it's over, I'm done, the child will never go back to it because he says, now I have completed my syllabus. What do you mean by syllabus is never completed? It's a lifelong learning process. You are teaching, my friends, you're teaching adjectives in class 3 and you're teaching adjectives in class 8. Why? You'll say, why am I teaching adjectives in class 8? I'm teaching it in 3. I'm still teaching it in class 8. I'm teaching subtraction and multiplication in class 4. I'm even teaching it in class 10. I'm teaching different aspects of it in class 12. So what am I saying? Open-ended, leave it open-ended. And you say, okay, now you're doing this addition. There'll be different types of additions as you develop. And those additions will be at different levels. For example, if you're doing mathematics, why should the child do simple mathematics? You give him a sum, you give him a problem which says, try to find out, give him a project in which he tries to find out food distribution in a state. How is food distribution? How many lorries are used? What is the kind of quintals of wheat that go? And so this way he's able to make out whether, because what is the point of learning maths, coming out of a maths class and not being able to plot the rainfall of your city? or plot the heat temperatures of your city. If you cannot plot the electricity audit card of your school, what maths have you done? Maths has to be connected with life. So if you have maths, then create maths exhibitions and maths exploration programs where the children are told, give me a project through mathematics by which you can then tell us how you solved a problem. How have you solved the problem of congestion of traffic? I used to live in China for 5 years, and China is built in circles, especially Beijing is built in circles. And I remember so well, the traffic used to be blocked very much like the way traffic is blocked in India. So there was a method in which we had to see, when does this red light come on? When does this green light come on? When does this red light come on? So traffic moves. Now that is a mathematical concept. So teach children mathematics so that they can be of use to society, not just become some mathematician, because ultimately what was Einstein? He created the theory of relativity. He brought in mathematics to a different level. There are Einsteins amongst us, but we're not teaching it to them. We're not allowing them to be curious and free. We're just teaching them 2 + 2 is 4, 2x is 3x, 3x is 2x, blah, blah, blah. Create the story of research and methodology and differences in their lives. Now I want to ask you this question. When I think about this, what in your mind as teachers, and you've been listening to me and I've been beating on and on all this while. So what in your mind is the innovative space of a thinking classroom in your school? Would anybody like to answer? What kind of a thinking school? What should a school look like? What should be there in those little circles I have made? What should be there? What kind of stuff should be in your school? What should be there? You've been listening, you've been hearing me, as if you've been listening, but you've been listening, you've been hearing me. Can you give me some points what you think should be there in this? Anybody would like to? You can write down your answer, you can say it. What do you think? If anybody would like to say, I'd be really pleased if somebody said anything. And never be shy of your thoughts. You know, I used to ask the most crazy questions as a young teacher. I used to ask even crazier questions as a child. Many times I was told to shut up, but I didn't shut up. And that's why today I feel I'm not inhibited. So what? If I say something, it's wrong. So what?
Writing in chat box. You can see.
Are they writing, sir? Could you tell me what they're writing, sir?
They are writing in chat box, madam. You can see the chat box.
No, for some reason, I don't know why.
Gamification.
Can I just look at, I'm seeing the chat box. I'm going to see the chat.
Some are writing creativity.
Yeah, very nice. Somebody is saying creativity, gamification. Is that what I'm seeing? What am I seeing?
All this they are written. Some is written observation.
Can you just read it out to me, dear? Can you just read it out to me?
Yeah, madam. One now came observation. One
yes, perfect. Observation, perfect. Yes.
Yeah, I'm telling from the beginning. Creativity is first one. Second one is story, flexibility.
Excellent point. Flexibility, excellent point.
Drawing songs, drawing and song systems.
Correct.
Teach values.
Perfect. Ethics.
Gamification.
Very good.
Observation.
Excellent.
Imagination.
Excellent.
Productivity.
Very good.
Dramatization.
Excellent.
Okay, communication.
Very good.
Project based.
Wonderful.
So these are the sentences.
Very nice.
Moral values, technology, discipline.
Yeah. So I'm so relieved. I'm so relieved they're listening to me.
Analytical skills.
Very nice. So here I am.
Yeah. And inquiry based learning, understanding, design thinking, collaboration, justice, human values.
Here. So here you have all what you said. Media and technology, creativity, communication, collaboration, critical thinking. So you have a very brilliant school, I must say.
Yeah, ma'am, our teachers are brilliant.
You are very good team. I want a big hand.
So we should
awareness. I'm so happy. See the word flexibility. See the word flexibility also.
Yeah.
Adaptability, flexibility, mental health, information, communication, technology, global awareness. They're all there, sir. Excellent.
Yes. Our
Excellent.
teachers are very responsive also, and if they were unmuted, they would have talked on the mic only, but unfortunately, we have kept them muted. So,
No, I understand, but very, very nice.
yeah.
So now I want to come to assessment, and I think this is a very important point. So now there are formative and there are summatives. Summative, everybody knows, but I just want to say that how do we define and identify the learning outcomes throughout the year? So at all stages, the learning outcomes, abilities, knowledge, which I shared to you, should be assessed, especially in the beginning, the middle, and the year end. So start assess. So if you assess them in the beginning, you know where do you have to go. You have to assess children right in the beginning, so you know where they are going. Whether you address them through a project, you give them out a project right in the beginning, you'll be able to assess them. And then you assess them in the middle again. You can keep doing continuous comprehensive evaluation. I've always been a great admirer of CCE. I've been involved with it. For some reason, it went away. But today also, NEP is very much the same. And those of you who work through the CCE will find it even more ways. And there are multiple ways. So I think we have to select appropriate assessment models and measures to assess learning outcomes. Now, there's only not one way of assessing. There are multiple ways of assessing. You can assess each child through the way that you think best. You can create clusters of assessment and see these childs I will assess like this. These childs I will assess like this. I know it will be a little difficult. Just tell me how many children in your class? How many children in a class in your school? Can anybody tell me, please, how many children in a class in your school? Anwarji, can you tell me? Sir, you're muted, sir. I can't hear you. I can't hear, sir.
Around 30 students, 30 to 35.
30 students. Great. So essentially, what are we looking at? So 30, 35 students, you can divide them into clusters of 10, 10, 10 and assess 3 different ways. So you can address the early adopters, the innovators differently. Because I hope my presentation is visible to everybody. Yeah. So you see, the thing is, what is happening also is that the gifted and the talented are also being ignored these days. I think a special program should be made for the gifted and the talented also. So the way we make special program for children with inclusion, with disabilities, we should make a special program for gifted and talented because they get bored very easily. So we should assess them also differently. So let's create these confidence clusters in children so they feel a way forward. Maybe we can, it's a little challenging, but we should make 2 or 3 types of question papers. And maybe children can attempt 2 or 3 types of question papers. And they can say, ma'am, this is simple for me. Can I attempt the other one? Give them a chance to attempt another question paper. So they have different levels of question papers. It'll be a very interesting experience because 30 is not a very big group of people in a classroom. I mean, in India, we're grappling with 50, even in a CBSE school, sometimes there are 50 kids.
Government regulation is there, ma'am.
Very good.
Actually, when I took over as a principal, I had 6,400 students here.
My God.
Okay, and the school, after some days, there was a small mishap happened here. And after that, they started regulating schools with the admissions. And
Okay.
what they did is they started calculating the dimension of the school. Based on that, they started civil defense is very strict here. Civil defense is very, very strict because so many across our school now almost 3,000 ACs will run at a time.
Oh, I see.
Continuous 3,000 ACs will run at a time. So, so for calculating all these things, by seeing this, they started distributing students, and according to the criteria set by the Ministry of Qatar here, one student should get 8 square meter area in the school.
I see.
8 square meter area in the school. In case if it is KG, the KG student should get 5 square meter area in the class.
Fantastic.
So that was the thing. And our classrooms are very big. We can accommodate 45 also. Once upon a time, we had 45 students in the classroom. But due to the gradual regulation by the ministry, now our strength from 6,400 to we are reduced 2,000. Now we have come to 4,400.
But even then, it's a very big school.
Yeah, very big school. And we have 4 different buildings here. KG wing separately as well as
Very nice.
admin block is different. And
Okay.
boys, girls, separate buildings, all 4 buildings spread across 38,000 square meters total
Fantastic.
campus.
Mm, mm.
So this
Great.
is, yeah, ma'am.
No, this is tremendous.
Yeah.
So, no, I think you're so that's you. I think you're very blessed in that, and so that is why I think with these small numbers, you can do lots of experiments in assessment, in rubrics, in learning, and in analyzing. You have to keep analyzing your results. What we tend to do is, we have the result, we give the result, the child moves. I think before the child moves, I'm sure you must be doing it, or if you're not doing it, it'd be nice if you did it. That if we could have meetings with the teachers of the class that the child is going to and the class from which the child is coming to ensure that there's an efficient and meaningful transition. Because the assessment results are worthless if they're not used. If they're just lying there in some data bank or they're lying, it is important that assessments have to be adjusted and tweaked and spread out so that the assessors improve. What is the point of having just one type of assessment model? If you feel that this model is not working, see that there is a typical model of that 3-hour question paper, and that is why the CBSE had so much of problem this year. Because of COVID, we could not do, and that is why parents were in such a mess. The children were in a mess. We had to moderate, we had to do all this because we were still stuck in the old world of after 3 hours, you give that paper, you give us the questions, and so CBSE in its wisdom, and because it's a very progressive board, realized that it has to move forward from this. And so the next groups that you're finding, I'm sure you've got the different circulars, but I think they're looking at assessments in different ways. And, within assessment itself, it's another huge workshop for assessment, which can be done with you at some point. But I think it's important that you re-look at the way your assessment models are working. Because what's the point if the assessment is not working? This 99% and 100% to each child is not appropriate assessment. It's not right. It's not bringing out the skills, values, attitudes, abilities of children. It's just mining their mind for information. They're just mining them for information. And so I come to the next slide. I don't want to do this. I just want to show you this slide. It's an important slide because this slide is a growth mindset slide. It says, it's like a report card. It's a very interesting report card which talks about the methodology of assessment. So self-assessment, peer assessment, teacher assessment, parent assessment. So if you can do a sort of a double whammy or a quadruple whammy, with 4, well, how does the parent perceive? You'll see parents say, oh, my child is doing very well at home. You'll say like that. But you'll say, but sorry, but in school, they're not doing. Now, why should that happen? The parent is not lying. There is some gap between what the parent is thinking, what's happening with the child. What is the teacher assessment? What do the children think of the child? What is the peer assessment? And what does the child think of himself? Remember, I told you about perception. The child thinks he looks like a lion. You think he looks like a kitten. So the perceptions are very important. So how do you bring in, so just look at the way they move. Reasoning, metacognition, and the rest of it is digital literacy, citizenship, etc. So I can choose and use different questioning techniques to focus or expand my thinking. I'm able to generate ideas and actions based on existing and new ideas. This is the kind, can the child do this? Can I analyze, evaluate, and reflect and form an opinion of myself? Can I reflect on my own learning to learn, that I can understand? Can I see the value in working with others? And can I communicate my thinking to others? Try to look at this assessment report card. The assessment report card is about communication, collaboration, metacognition, reasoning. It's a very interesting report card. Have a look at this. I will now miss out a few others and I will come to, what did I do? I would like to come back to, what did I do? Yeah, now I will come here. Now these are the big shifts. These are the big shifts that you should start looking at. The big shift is there should be a learning matrix in your classroom. The learning matrix should be based on this. It should be equitable, it should be inclusive, it should be joyful, it should be holistic, and it should have an understanding of diverse knowledge. So the knowledge should be interdisciplinary, disciplinary, epistemic, that is research-based, and procedural. The skills that you develop in children should be social, emotional, practical, physical, cognitive, and learning to learn, metacognitive. As you mentioned, the well-being of the child, the social emotional learning, their principles, their ethics, their possibilities are the attitudes and values. And the transformative competencies, which is a very big thing that happens in Finland, and I've worked in Finland for several months, is how do you meet the challenges? How do you shape a better future? How do you create new values? How do you reconcile tensions? And how do you take responsibility for yourself? This is a tall order, but this is the way we have to look at learning in our classrooms, right? And this is what a creative classroom should actually be, with all its knowledge, skills, competencies, attitudes, values, and transformative competencies. They're also called transversal competencies at times. So this is the big shift. The matrix should be based on skills, values, competencies. The ownership of the matrix should support the capacities of curriculum enablers. Those who are showing the curriculum, the teachers, should be supported. They should feel that it is their own learning. They should have that capacity. Content should be taught thematically as far as possible. It can be project-based, it can be activity-based, it can be concept-based, but it should be thematic. Then multiple pedagogical approaches can be used for differential learning. Assessments should be consistent both in approach and analysis, and no child should be left behind. There should be inclusion at all levels and involvement of families at every single stage. So friends, with that, I bring to an end this presentation of mine. I promised, sir, that I would end by 11:30. I have 10 minutes left, and I'm a great believer in Gandhi. I've done my PhD in Gandhian symbolism, and he placed a lot of importance on education and the education of the head, the hand, and the heart. And I think ultimately, learning is an emotional experience. Children learn the best when they're happy, when they're joyful. And children learn the best when they love their teacher, when they love their teacher. No child learns when they don't like the teacher. You may have the best teacher who is very good at a topic. If the child doesn't like the teacher, they will never learn. So I think it's very important to make that connect with the child, because they are the only future we have, my friends. And they are going to, through them, we will affect eternity. It's been such a pleasure to speak to all of you. I hope I made some sense. I hope I brought some value to your lives. And I'm always there for Mr. Shaukat Ali. I'm always there for you, sir. Any way that you want. Thank you very much for today.
You are my mentor, actually. You are my mentor, actually. I consider you as a mentor.
I'll just stop the screen sharing, sir. I'll just stop the screen sharing.
Definitely, madam, you are my mentor, actually. We consider you as a mentor of our school. And thank you so much for giving value and coming here and sharing your valuable time. Being Sunday there today, you will get only one day to spend with your family. But you are supposed to take mother to hospital. But anyhow, you have spent so much of time with us. We are very, very grateful. And let us pray that you will remain always healthy, and your mother also remain always healthy, and your family also remain always healthy, and keep you always happy always. And hopefully we'll meet shortly to Qatar. So I could get chance to bring Satbir Bedi madam to Qatar once, and madam came and went. Satbir Bedi madam came and went.
I know Satbir.
Yeah, Satbir Bedi madam came and went. So I hope in future we'll get chance and COVID restrictions go and you can also travel to Qatar. It's a wonderful country and wonderful. We have Doha. So please visit our Qatar, and we are very, very grateful and thankful to you. And our appreciation will be in the form of clap from all of us.
Thank you.
The fraternity of ideals.
Thank you so much. God bless you all, and Khuda Hafiz. Thank you so much.
1 minute, they'll tell formal vote of thanks.
Yes.
From our side. Thank you, ma'am.
Life is not a compartment. It's a whole, a building. Wow. Like this, many phrases, messages, like life experiences, lively anecdotes, creative examples, etc. Ma'am has used in her throughout presentation. I'm sure we have a lot to take home from today's presentation. The way you have explained in each and every slide is so attractive that we all teachers can actualize the core of your presentation in our academic life. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your sparing your valuable time with us today. Now I call upon Mr. Sajid Shamim to propose the vote of thanks.
Guest speaker of today's refresher program, Dr. Amita Wattal, respected principal, Mr. Syed Shaukat Ali, heads of sections, heads of departments, and teachers, a very warm good morning. It is my privilege to propose vote of thanks for this auspicious occasion. Gratitude is a positive gesture from the bottom of our heart towards an eminent personality for the knowledge imparted by her to all of us. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to Dr. Amita, ma'am, for her valuable time. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you. And please
I also
share
would
my
like-
presentation with everybody, sir. Please give it out to everybody.